What if I told you that the secret to looking younger isn't found in a cream or a magic potion, but deep within yourself? What if aging gracefully was more about how you live, love, and let go, rather than the passage of time? Across centuries, Buddhist philosophy has revealed profound truths about inner peace, resilience, and the radiant light we all carry within. These teachings aren't just about spiritual enlightenment. They hold the key to a vibrant, fulfilled, and youthful life. Today, let us embark on a journey to uncover the hidden truths behind youthfulness, harmony, resilience, and the legacy of peace we leave behind. This is not just a story about life. It's a guide to living well. It's about connecting with the eternal light inside you and sharing it with the world. Together, we'll explore ancient wisdom through a lens that is both timeless and deeply personal. Whether you're searching for balance, healing, or simply a way to embrace life's changes with grace, this journey is for you. So, to take a deep breath, let go of the chaos of the world, and step into a space of calm and discovery. This is the path of quiet wisdom. Chapter 1. The hidden truth behind youthfulness. In life, there are truths that reveal themselves only when we've walked the path long enough to understand them. To those who look younger than their years, it may seem like a blessing, a gift from nature, or fate. But if we look through the lens of ancient wisdom, we uncover a deeper story, one of resilience, mindfulness, and the profound ways in which our inner peace shapes our outer appearance. Buddha once taught, "What we think, we become." Our thoughts, emotions, and actions carve the contours of our existence, much like a river shapes the rocks along its bed. If you carry the weight of anger, jealousy, or regret, it etches lines onto your face, much like a storm leaves scars on the land. But those who cultivate peace within radiate it outward, and that glow can make them appear timeless. Your appearance is not just about genetics, it's a reflection of your inner state. When you embrace mindfulness, you invite calm into your heart, and that serenity becomes your shield against the ravages of stress and time. Think of the lotus flower. It blooms in muddy waters yet remains untouched by the dirt. In the same way, a peaceful heart keeps you untroubled, even amidst life's chaos. To understand this hidden truth, let's delve deeper into the roots of Buddhist philosophy. The principle of mindfulness is central to this transformation. Mindfulness is not merely about being present, but about being deeply aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment. Imagine carrying a mirror that reflects not just your face, but your innermost emotions. If the mirror is smudged with worry and fear, your reflection, your life becomes distorted. However, when the mirror is clear, you see yourself as you truly are, and your outer self reflects this clarity. Stress and negativity are like shadows that follow us unless we consciously illuminate them with understanding and compassion. For example, have you noticed how stress manifests physically? A furrowed brow, tense shoulders, shallow breaths. These signs are not just fleeting. Over time, they sculpt our bodies, etching the story of our struggles into our skin. But when we practice letting go of anger, envy, and the incessant need for control, we lighten the burden on our hearts and our faces. Let's consider the transformative power of compassion. Compassion is not merely an act, but a state of being. When you cultivate compassion, starting with yourself, you dissolve the hard edges of resentment and frustration. Self-compassion is the gentle reminder that you are human, imperfect, and yet wholly deserving of love and kindness. This practice softens the lines etched by self-criticism and brings a natural warmth to your expression. When this compassion extends outward, to strangers, to loved ones, even to those who have wronged you, it creates a ripple effect, nurturing not just your spirit, but the spirits of those around you. Equally important is the role of gratitude in shaping our physical and emotional well-being. Gratitude rewires the brain, fostering positive emotions that radiate through our entire being. Imagine starting each day by acknowledging 3 things you are grateful for. This simple practice shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance, from what's missing to what's present. The glow of gratitude is unmistakable. It's the light in the eyes of someone who sees beauty in the ordinary and joy in the smallest blessings. Buddhist teachings also emphasize the impermanence of life, a concept that many find daunting, but that holds the key to profound peace. Impermanence reminds us that nothing, not pain, not joy, not even youth, lasts forever. By embracing this truth, we release the futile effort to cling to what cannot be held. Imagine trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Yet when you relax, the water rests gently in your palms. This is the essence of living in harmony with change. It's not about resisting the flow of life, but about moving gracefully with it. The wisdom of letting go is not limited to impermanence. It also applies to expectations. How often do we burden ourselves with the weight of unmet expectations, whether our own or others? The tension of trying to fit into molds or chase goals that don't align with our true selves is exhausting. But when we let go of these expectations, we free ourselves to live authentically. This authenticity brings an ease to our demeanor, a sense of lightness that transcends age. Resilience, too, is a cornerstone of youthful vitality. Resilience is not about avoiding challenges, but about how we respond to them. Life will always present difficulties, a sudden illness, a financial setback, the loss of a loved one. These moments test our spirit, but resilience allows us to face these trials without losing ourselves. It is the quiet strength that says, "This too shall pass." And as we emerge from these trials, we carry not the weight of the struggle, but the wisdom it imparted. Finally, let us reflect on the power of joy. Joy is not the fleeting excitement of external pleasures, but the deep contentment that arises from within. It's the smile that comes from a heart at peace, the laughter shared in moments of connection, the serenity found in silence. Joy, when nurtured, becomes a natural anti-aging remedy, infusing life with energy and vibrancy. The hidden truth behind youthfulness is not a secret potion or a rare gene. It is the culmination of mindful living, compassionate thinking, and the unwavering commitment to inner peace. It is the realization that your outer self is a canvas painted by your inner world. And when that world is filled with light, love, and understanding, it shines through, illuminating not just your face, but the lives of everyone you touch. Chapter 2. Living in Harmony with Change. Let's start with a profound truth. Life is impermanent. Everything changes. Nothing remains. Accepting this truth allows us to let go of attachments and expectations that lead to suffering. When we resist this natural flow, we burden ourselves with worry, regret, and frustration. But when we embrace it, we find freedom. And in that freedom, we find youth. Take, for example, the practice of gratitude. To live with gratitude is to honor each moment, to cherish the beauty that surrounds us, no matter how small. Gratitude calms the restless mind and slows the pace of our racing lives. It teaches us to be content, to find joy not in material possessions, but in the present moment. And contentment, as Buddha once said, is the greatest wealth. Gratitude is more than saying thank you. It is a way of seeing the world. Imagine walking through a garden filled with flowers. Instead of lamenting the absence of a specific bloom, gratitude allows you to marvel at the beauty of what is already there. This perspective is transformative. It shifts your focus from lack to abundance, reminding you that even in times of hardship, there is something to be grateful for. Forgiveness, another cornerstone of harmony, is the act of releasing ourselves from the chains of resentment. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. When we forgive, we do not condone the harm done to us. Instead, we free ourselves from the burden of carrying that pain. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. It lightens our emotional load, allowing us to move forward with grace and ease. Living in harmony with change also means accepting the cyclical nature of life. Just as seasons come and go, so do the phases of our lives. There is beauty in this rhythm, a reminder that every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. Embracing this truth can be challenging, especially when faced with loss or disappointment. Yet it is in these moments that we grow. By letting go of what no longer serves us, we create space for new opportunities and experiences. One of the greatest lessons in Buddhist philosophy is the power of the present moment. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, but the present is a gift we can hold in our hands. When we live in the now, we experience life fully. The taste of a meal, the sound of laughter, the warmth of the sun on our skin, these simple pleasures become profound when we give them our full attention. Consider the metaphor of a flowing river. The water moves forward, never clinging to the rocks or branches it encounters. It adapts to the terrain, finding its way with persistence and flexibility. In the same way, we can learn to navigate life's challenges by staying present and adaptable. Resistance only creates turbulence, but when we flow with the current, we discover a sense of peace and purpose. Living in harmony with change also requires self-awareness. It is easy to get swept up in the demands of daily life, losing sight of our true selves. Through meditation and reflection, we can reconnect with our inner being. This practice helps us identify the sources of our suffering and guides us toward actions that align with our values. Self-awareness is the foundation of inner peace, allowing us to respond to life's challenges with wisdom and compassion. As we embrace change, we learn to let go of our attachment to outcomes. This does not mean we stop striving for our goals, but rather that we release our need for control. When we detach from the results, we free ourselves from the anxiety and disappointment that often accompany unmet expectations. This detachment brings a sense of freedom, enabling us to approach life with curiosity and openness. Living in harmony with change is not about avoiding difficulties, but about finding balance amidst them. It is about cultivating resilience, gratitude, and self-awareness. By embracing the impermanence of life, we discover a profound sense of peace and joy. This is the essence of true harmony, a state of being that transcends the ups and downs of existence and connects us to the timeless wisdom within ourselves. Chapter 3. Strength and Resilience. Resilience is not merely about enduring life's storms, but about learning to dance in the rain. It is the quiet strength that allows us to move forward even when the path is steep, uneven, or shrouded in uncertainty. In the teachings of Buddha, resilience is not framed as resistance, but as adaptability. Like bamboo that bends with the wind rather than breaking, resilience is the art of remaining grounded yet flexible in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Consider the storms of life: loss, failure, betrayal, and disappointment. These experiences can either break us or make us stronger, depending on how we approach them. Buddha's teachings remind us that suffering is a part of life, but so is the opportunity to grow from it. As he said, pain is certain, but suffering is optional. The key lies in how we respond to pain. Do we resist it, allowing it to fester and deepen? Or do we accept it, learn from it, and let it shape us into wiser, more compassionate beings? Resilience begins with acceptance. To accept does not mean to resign. Rather, it is the act of acknowledging reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. When faced with adversity, the first step is to see it clearly, without denial or avoidance. For example, when a tree loses its leaves in autumn, it does not mourn the loss. It understands that this shedding is necessary for new growth in spring. Similarly, when we experience loss, we must trust that it paves the way for renewal. Another essential aspect of resilience is perspective. Buddhist philosophy teaches us to view life through the lens of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, neither joy nor sorrow. This understanding helps us navigate the highs and lows with equanimity. When faced with difficulties, remind yourself, this too shall pass. Such a mindset fosters inner strength, allowing you to endure the storm, knowing that calm waters will return. Cultivating resilience also involves nurturing a sense of self-compassion. Often, we are our harshest critics, berating ourselves for perceived failures or weaknesses. But resilience thrives on kindness, starting with the kindness we show ourselves. Imagine comforting a friend who has fallen. You would not scold them, but encourage them to stand up and try again. Offer yourself the same grace. Forgive your mistakes, honor your efforts, and remind yourself that growth is a process, not a destination. Community plays a vital role in resilience. While inner strength is crucial, the support of others can be transformative. In Buddhism, the Sangha, a community of like-minded individuals, provides a source of encouragement and wisdom. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, who listen without judgment, and who inspire you to persevere, strengthens your resolve. As the saying goes, shared joy is double joy. Shared sorrow is half sorrow. Resilience is also about action. When life knocks us down, it is tempting to remain in a state of inertia, paralyzed by fear or despair. But the path to recovery begins with a single step. Take small, deliberate actions toward healing and progress. Whether it's reaching out for help, setting new goals, or simply practicing mindfulness, each step reinforces your strength and moves you closer to balance. Consider the story of a monk tasked with carrying water from a distant river to his monastery each day. One morning, he discovered that his bucket had a crack, causing much of the water to leak out. At first, he despaired, thinking his efforts were wasted. But over time, he noticed that the path he walked daily had become lined with flowers nourished by the dripping water. What seemed like a flaw had, in fact, created unexpected beauty. Similarly, our struggles often leave behind gifts we may not immediately recognize. Buddha also taught the importance of gratitude in resilience. Even in the darkest times, there is something to be thankful for. A lesson learned, a moment of kindness, or simply the strength to endure another day. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have, from despair to hope. It reminds us that even amidst trials, life offers moments of grace. Finally, resilience is about hope. To be resilient is to believe in the possibility of better days ahead. Hope is not naive optimism. It is the quiet confidence that, no matter how hard the present moment may be, it will not define your entire journey. Hope fuels perseverance, ignites courage, and lights the way forward. In the end, resilience is not about avoiding life's difficulties, but about embracing them as opportunities for growth. It is the understanding that every challenge carries within it the seeds of wisdom, strength, and transformation. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, resilience allows us to emerge from adversity not just as survivors, but as beings more radiant and whole. This is the essence of strength in resilience, a strength that is unyielding, compassionate, and profoundly human. Chapter 4. The Power of Inner Light. The human spirit, much like a candle in the darkness, holds within it the ability to illuminate even the most shadowed corners of life. To cultivate this inner light is to access an enduring source of strength and tranquility that radiates outward. In Buddhist philosophy, this light represents the purity of a heart free from attachment, the clarity of a mind undisturbed by chaos, and the warmth of a soul that embraces compassion. What does it mean to nurture your inner light? It begins with self-awareness. To truly connect with your inner light, you must first quiet the noise of the external world. This is where the practice of meditation becomes invaluable. Imagine sitting in stillness, your breath steady and rhythmic, each inhalation and exhalation connecting you to the present moment. Meditation is not merely an escape from the world. It is a journey inward, a means to clear the fog of distraction and uncover the brilliance that resides within you. As you meditate, you may begin to notice the layers of emotional clutter that dim your inner light. Perhaps there is unresolved anger, lingering guilt, or unacknowledged fear. Buddhist teachings encourage us to observe these emotions without judgment. By doing so, we allow them to dissipate, much like clouds dispersing to reveal the sun. This process of acknowledgement and release is transformative. It cleanses the heart, allowing the inner light to shine brighter. Mindfulness, too, plays a crucial role in cultivating this light. To live mindfully is to approach each moment with full presence and gratitude. Consider the simple act of eating a meal. When you savor each bite, appreciating the flavors and the nourishment it provides, you are practicing mindfulness. This level of attention, when applied to daily life, fosters a deeper connection to the world around you and to your own inner being. Compassion is another essential element of the inner light. Compassion for others begins with compassion for yourself. Too often, we are our own harshest critics, holding ourselves to impossible standards and berating ourselves for perceived failures. But as the Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. When you practice self-compassion, you create a space of kindness within, a sanctuary where your inner light can thrive. This compassion extends outward, creating ripples that touch the lives of those around you. A single act of kindness, a comforting word, a helping hand, or even a genuine smile can ignite the inner light in someone else. In this way, your light becomes a beacon, guiding others toward their own peace and clarity. Let us not forget the role of gratitude in illuminating the spirit. Gratitude is the recognition of life's abundance, the acknowledgement of blessings both big and small. When you cultivate gratitude, you shift your focus from what is lacking to what is present. This shift is profound, for it transforms the way you see the world. Gratitude brightens your perspective, making even the mundane feel extraordinary. It is a practice that feeds your inner light, allowing it to glow with warmth and vitality. Adversity, too, has a way of refining the inner light. While challenges may seem like forces that threaten to extinguish our spirit, they are, in fact, opportunities for growth. Consider the pearl, formed within the oyster as a response to irritation. In the same way, life's difficulties can polish our character, strengthening our resilience and deepening our wisdom. Each obstacle overcome adds to the brilliance of our inner light, making it more enduring and radiant. Finally, let us reflect on the interconnectedness of all things. The light within you is not separate from the light in others. When you nurture your inner light, you contribute to a collective brightness that uplifts the world. This interconnectedness is beautifully captured in the Buddhist concept of Indra's net, a metaphorical web where each jewel reflects the light of every other jewel. Your inner light, when cultivated, becomes a part of this greater harmony, creating a world illuminated by compassion, gratitude, and peace. In nurturing your inner light, you are not only enriching your own life, but also becoming a source of inspiration for those around you. The power of this light is immeasurable, for it transcends the physical and touches the very essence of existence. It is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and a reminder that, no matter how dark the night, the light within us has the power to shine through. Chapter 5: A Legacy of Peace. Peace is not a fleeting moment of quiet, nor is it the absence of conflict. True peace is a state of being, a profound harmony that arises from within and radiates outward. As you walk your path, consider the legacy of peace you leave behind, a legacy that will ripple through the lives of those you touch. To create such a legacy, begin by cultivating peace within yourself. This journey starts with self-awareness, the ability to recognize the sources of your unrest. What fears linger in your mind? What unresolved conflicts burden your heart? In Buddhism, the practice of self-inquiry is a powerful tool for understanding these inner struggles. By shining a light on them, you take the first step toward healing. Self-compassion is integral to this process. It is the gentle voice that says, it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be imperfect. When you extend kindness to yourself, you create a foundation of peace that allows you to face the world with calmness and strength. This inner peace becomes the bedrock of your legacy. A legacy of peace also involves your interactions with others. The Buddha taught, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. In your relationships, strive to embody this principle. Offer understanding instead of judgment, patience instead of frustration, and forgiveness instead of resentment. These acts of love and compassion ripple outward, inspiring others to do the same. Consider the power of mindfulness in shaping your legacy. When you live mindfully, you bring full presence to each moment, each conversation, and each decision. Mindfulness allows you to respond to life's challenges with clarity and wisdom, rather than reacting impulsively. It teaches you to cherish the present and to act in ways that align with your values. Through mindfulness, your actions become deliberate, thoughtful, and impactful. Your legacy is also shaped by the example you set. Imagine a grandparent who, through their calm demeanor and wise words, becomes a source of comfort and guidance for their family. Their presence alone speaks volumes about the peace they have cultivated within. Similarly, the way you navigate life's storms, the way you treat others, and the way you carry yourself all contribute to the legacy you leave behind. Gratitude plays a profound role in this legacy. By expressing gratitude, you not only acknowledge the blessings in your life, but also inspire others to see the beauty in their own. A simple thank you can uplift someone's spirit, creating a chain reaction of positivity. Gratitude is contagious, and its effects extend far beyond the moment. Adversity, though often seen as an obstacle, can be a defining element of your legacy. How you rise after a fall, how you find light in the darkest times, and how you transform challenges into opportunities, all of these demonstrate the strength of your spirit. Remember, a peaceful legacy is not about living a life without struggles. It's about showing resilience and grace in the face of them. A legacy of peace is not confined to grand gestures. It is found in the small, everyday acts of kindness, a smile to a stranger, a listening ear to a friend, a word of encouragement to someone in need. These moments, though seemingly insignificant, weave together to create a tapestry of impact that endures. Finally, reflect on the interconnectedness of all beings. Your peace is not isolated. It contributes to the collective well-being of humanity. Just as a drop of water becomes part of the ocean, your actions and intentions merge with those of others, creating waves of change. By cultivating peace within yourself, you inspire others to do the same, and together we create a more harmonious world. As you walk your path, remember, your mind shapes your reality. Your peace is your power, and your youth, whether in years or in spirit, is yours to nurture. Each choice you make, each moment of mindfulness you embrace, adds to the tapestry of your life. Let the wisdom of Buddhist philosophy guide you. Share joy, cultivate peace, and above all, live in a way that allows you to radiate the timeless beauty of a soul at rest. This is not just the key to looking younger, it's the key to living well. May you carry this wisdom in your heart and wear it on your face. Your journey is yours to embrace, and your peace is the legacy you leave behind. As we reach the end of this journey, let's pause and reflect on the wisdom we've uncovered. The secret to youthfulness lies not in defying age, but in embracing life. It's in the serenity of a mind at peace, the compassion of a heart open to others, and the resilience of a spirit that rises after every fall. To live mindfully, to cultivate gratitude, and to nurture your inner light is to create a life that inspires and uplifts, not just for yourself, but for everyone you touch. Imagine a world where every person carries this light within them, where kindness is the norm, and peace is not just a goal but a way of being. This is the world we create when we live with intention, love with depth, and give with joy. Your legacy is not measured by the years you live, but by the light you leave behind in the hearts of others. May you walk forward with the wisdom of these teachings, radiating the timeless beauty of a soul at peace. Your journey continues, and with each step, you shape the world in ways both seen and unseen. Embrace this moment, this life, and the profound truth that your greatest gift is the peace you carry within.